Y&R Spoilers reveal the dramatic plan for Tara's return. She will regain custody of Harrison, which could lead to dramatic conflicts. The intricate and complicated relationships between powerful figures have never been truly peaceful. Especially when it comes to Audra Charles and Kyle Abbott, two names that have repeatedly stirred up the fragile order of the business and love world here. Things have become more unpredictable than ever. Recently, rumors of Audra and Kyle's closeness have been spreading quietly throughout the corridors of Newman Media, Jabot, and even the lavish parties they often appear at. However, behind the smiles, eyes, and seemingly harmless jokes, an undercurrent of lust, calculation, and betrayal is waiting to explode, threatening to destroy all the barriers that the two have worked hard to build since their last breakup. The custody battle between Kyle Abbott and Tara Locke is entering an unprecedentedly tense and dramatic phase, promising to bring the audience fascinating, emotional, and surprising developments. The relationship between the two has long been tumultuous, and now, when it comes to the future of the little child, the center of both their feelings and lives, everything becomes more complicated than ever. First of all, it must be understood that this is not just a simple legal battle, but also a deep internal struggle of each person. Tara, a determined mother, has gone through many challenges in her life, not only because of her personal circumstances but also because of her efforts to protect her sacred motherhood. She not only fought to keep her child, but also wanted to prove that maternal love can never be traded or divided. The days of separation have made Tara's feelings for her child stronger, and she is determined not to let any force overshadow that sacred bond. Meanwhile, Kyle, with all the conflicts, torments and pressures he has to endure, is not easily giving up his responsibility as a father. Although he is not always perfect in Tara's eyes, Kyle truly loves his child and wants to do the best for him. He believes that he can provide a safer, more stable environment, where his child can live in the arms of a complete family, lacking nothing. But most of all, deep down, Kyle is facing doubts about his ability to be a father and is afraid that his decisions will cause the child unnecessary harm. What makes things more complicated is the appearance of Audra Charles, a woman who is not only a colleague and close friend, but is also secretly deeply affecting Kyle's psychology and emotions. Audra, with her sharp and calculating personality, constantly sowed doubts, confusion, and unanswerable questions into Kyle's mind. She even used subtle methods, meaningful words, and clever actions to make him waver, unable to focus on taking care of the child and maintain his stance in the fight with Tara. Audra was not just an outsider, but she was like a shadow that always haunted Kyle in his weakest moments. She knew his weaknesses and secret fears, from which she gradually poked at his unhealed wounds. Every time they interacted, every conversation left a deep mark on Kyle's thoughts, causing him to gradually lose direction and unable to maintain his stance in the already fierce custody battle. These chaotic thoughts made Kyle constantly doubt his decisions, about love and responsibility, even about his own worth. On the other hand, the boy's state of mind, the center of all the conflicts, also becomes an extremely important and emotional factor in this war. The child, with his innocence and innate love for both his father and mother, is standing between two worlds, two different feelings, not knowing which to choose. Does the boy really want to live with his mother again? Or does he have his own feelings, deep attachments to his father and his current environment? The answer is not simple and can become the trigger for many new dramatic details. In meetings with psychological consultants, private moments, or even tense arguments between Kyle and Tara, the child reveals conflicting thoughts and emotions. Sometimes he wants to be with his mother, who always makes him feel safe and warm, but at other times he shows deep attachment to his father, who always listens and gives him happy, laughter-filled moments. This struggle not only makes the boy more sensitive and vulnerable, but also poses a great challenge for both Kyle and Tara. How to put the child's interests first, and are they strong enough to overcome all conflicts and personal calculations for the child's future? Standing in the eye of the storm, Kyle and Tara have tense and emotional conversations. They argue not only about custody but also about deeper issues, about trust, about forgiveness, about responsibility, and true love for their children. While Tara always stands firm, sometimes stubbornly, Kyle is caught in a spiral of doubt and confusion, especially when Audra constantly appears and affects his mind. Each conversation becomes a relentless battle, where each tries to gain the upper hand, but also reveals their own weaknesses and deep wounds. As for Audra, she is like an undercurrent. Although she does not directly participate in the war, she has a great influence on Kyle's psychology. Her clever words, gestures, and meaningful eyes make it impossible for Kyle to escape the spiral of doubt and conflict. Audra's appearance not only changes Kyle's thinking, but also makes him wonder if he is really capable of becoming a good father, or if he is deceiving himself and the child he loves. The audience following this story not only witnesses sharp intellectual battles, tense arguments, but is also invited to sympathize with each character, their pain, their hopes, and dreams. Can Kyle overcome the pressure from the outside and within his own heart to make the right decision for his child's future? Can Tara maintain her sacred maternal love without letting anger and hurt cloud her mind? And will the boy, the middleman, find his voice, to finally live in the most loving arms? The custody battle between Kyle and Tara, along with the profound influence of Audra, is not only a story about power and law, but Audra is an ambitious woman, possessing dangerous beauty and a cold mind. The appearance of Nate Hastings in her life once made Audra think that she could change, could put aside her old habits of conquest to move towards a mature and sustainable love. However, the ghost of the past has never left her, and Kyle Abbott is that inseparable remnant. Kyle, with his sweet charm, intelligence but no less vulnerable, is stuck in his own emotional choices. Beside him is Claire Newman, a strong, new woman, full of desire to rebuild her life after painful events, but that love is just like a fragile string before a storm that Kyle is not sure to control. In recent days, Kyle and Audra have been accidentally pushed into each other's orbit. A chance meeting at Jabot about strategic cooperation between the two companies is just the beginning. Audra's eyes, Kyle's half-jokes, and the way they tried to pretend they were just colleagues made everyone around them even more curious and speculative. After stressful working hours, they met again at luxury bars, where strong drinks seemed to lower their defenses and close the distance between them. Gradually, their mutual attraction flared up like a fire that never went out. Memories of passionate nights, of secrets that only they knew, gradually revived every time the two accidentally made eye contact or simply brushed against each other when passing by. Audra knew the dangers of playing with fire, especially when Kyle was dating Claire, a woman who was gradually becoming a symbol of his change and maturity. She understood that a fall with Kyle would not only threaten her relationship with Nate, but also cause Kyle to lose the rare peace he had just found with Claire. But reason doesn't always win over the heart, especially for people who once loved each other passionately and never seemed to really forget each other. Kyle is no better. He knows he's slowly breaking all his commitments to Claire, who has always trusted and devoted herself to him. When he's with Claire, Kyle feels at peace, but that peace is often haunted by a lack of passion, a lack of intensity that only Audra can bring. Whenever Claire asks about work, about meetings with Audra, Kyle always avoids the question, only responding with safe answers. But deep down, he can't deny that there is still an irresistible attraction between him and Audra, something that makes him willing to trade all stability to touch the old feeling, even if only for a moment. Things start to spiral out of control one night after a meeting that lasts until late at Jabot. It was pouring rain, the staff had all gone home, leaving only the two of them with piles of papers and unfinished manuscripts. The air was quiet, the sound of rain falling outside the glass window made the distance between them even more stifling. When Audra accidentally spilled a cup of coffee on her documents, Kyle hurriedly helped her clean it up, and the two suddenly touched. Their eyes met for a long time, as if they were asking, as if all barriers were ready to collapse. And then, a kiss happened, irresistible, inexplicable, but also undeniable. It was the kiss of people who once loved each other, once painfully separated from each other, and now still couldn't let go of each other. But all the truths will eventually be revealed, especially in Genoa City, where nothing can be hidden forever. Right after that night, Kyle and Audra were caught in a spiral of guilt and torment. Audra became distant from Nate, always finding excuses to avoid romantic dates or intimate moments. Nate, being a sensitive person, soon realized that something had changed in Audra's eyes and attitude. Suspicion began to grow, although he did not dare to face it directly. As for Kyle, the relationship with Claire became increasingly awkward. Claire clearly felt Kyle's coldness and distance. The conversations that were once filled with laughter now became only superficial pleasantries. Meanwhile, Nate also began to investigate and follow Audra more. The unusual signs, the times Audra used overtime as an excuse to stay at the company, the hasty and furtive calls all made him unable to sit still. One afternoon, Nate decided to go to Jabot without notice, and he found Audra and Kyle together in the office in a very intimate atmosphere. Although both tried to act normal, with the intuition of a man who had truly loved, Nate knew that things were getting out of control. When all the secrets were exposed, the real pain came. Kyle was at risk of losing Claire, the woman who had helped him overcome many difficulties and believed in his ability to start his life over. Claire, despite her pain, had to choose between forgiving Kyle or letting go to heal her own heartache. Audra, who once thought she could control everything, now lost both Nate and the position of power she had worked so hard to build. Nate, with his pride deeply wounded, not only left Audra but also determined to return the cold, indifferent treatment she had given him. This love triangle left lasting consequences not only for the people involved but also for the work environment and families around them. Business partnerships between Jabot, Newman Media, and other companies were also severely affected as rumors of the affair spread throughout the business world. Each faced judgment, slander, and new challenges from colleagues, relatives, and competitors. After all, Kyle and Audra realized that temptation, no matter how sweet and intense, always comes at the cost of loss and hurt. Genoa City, where love and power go hand in hand with betrayal and lies, once again witnesses broken hearts and shattered dreams, but from that brokenness, each person must learn to stand up, become stronger, more mature, or lose faith in true love forever. And the biggest question remains. Can any of them truly start over, or will they forever be stuck in the darkness of an irreparable past? There are moments in a person's life when everything that used to be important pales before the power of love and the fear of losing the person they love most. For Victoria Newman, the past few months have been a series of such moments, where all the calculations of the business world, all the desires for power, all the plans for the future are shrunk behind the figure of one man. Cole Howard. When the bad news about Cole's health suddenly hit like a fierce whirlwind, everything in Victoria's heart was turned upside down. The man who had entered her life like a gentle breeze, then stayed like an irresistible destiny, was now facing the risk of leaving her forever. It was not only the obsession of a woman who had experienced many events, but also the silent cry for help of a heart struggling to hold on to the last fragile happiness. Cole's health was getting worse and worse. At first, it was fatigue that seemed to be caused by work pressure. But then, the signs became so obvious that not only Victoria but also those around her could not ignore them. One time, in the middle of a crowded party, Cole suddenly became dizzy, his face pale, and he had to be helped to a resting place by Victoria. At that moment, Victoria felt like time had stopped. In her eyes, there was nothing but the fear of losing Cole. The person who had accompanied, supported, and helped her overcome so many storms in life. When the doctors confirmed that Cole's illness was serious, Victoria almost collapsed. She could not imagine what her life would be like without that familiar figure, that warm hand, that gentle gaze, even though they had hurt each other so many times because of misunderstandings and wrong choices in the past. Inside Victoria were long days of restlessness, sleepless nights lying next to Cole, listening to his weak, choking breathing. She tried not to cry in front of him, but every time she turned away, tears could not be stopped. She became gentler and more patient than ever, taking care of Cole every little thing, from meals and sleep to every pill and every trip to the hospital. Her love was no longer the fiery love of youth, but became a mature love, knowing sacrifice, knowing pain, and knowing how to hold on to the most precious things in this moment, because she understood that the future promised nothing but uncertainty. With Cole, Victoria learned to be grateful for every moment, to cherish every handshake, every loving look, things that seemed small and that she had previously unintentionally taken for granted. Cole, despite getting weaker and weaker, still tried to maintain his strength and smile for the woman he loved. He knew his condition was not very good, but he did not want Victoria to live in sadness or pity. There were nights when Victoria was fast asleep beside him. Cole quietly looked up at the ceiling, thinking about the things he hadn't done yet, the unfinished plans. He wondered if he was worth it for Victoria to trade everything, to sacrifice her youth and hopes for the future just to be with a man facing a cruel fate. But every morning when he woke up, seeing Victoria's gentle eyes and warm hands, Cole knew he couldn't refuse that love, couldn't stop her from her determination to live every last day with him. It was also during those days that Victoria realized that life could take everything away from her, but it couldn't take away the love she had for Cole. The invisible fear made Victoria feel like she had to hurry, to hold on to what she had before it was too late. One night, when the two were sitting together on the balcony, quietly looking at the twinkling stars, Victoria suddenly held Cole's hand tightly, tears welling up as she proposed. "No pomp, no preparation, just words from the bottom of my heart. I don't care how much time is left, I just want to be your wife, I want to be with you in every moment left. Marry me, Cole." In that moment, all distance, all doubts disappeared. Cole felt the love from Victoria deeper, more steadfast and intense than ever. He burst into tears, unable to hold back his emotions for the first time. He just nodded silently and hugged her tightly. Immediately after the surprise proposal, the two began to prepare for a small, intimate wedding, without any fanfare or formality, just with their closest loved ones as witnesses. Victoria put all her heart into making the wedding the most beautiful day of their lives, as a way to tell the world that she would not succumb to fate, would not accept losing happiness even by a hair's breadth. The days of waiting for the wedding were both happy and painful, because everyone understood that this wedding was not only the beginning of a new chapter, but also the end of a life full of hope and desire to live. The Newman family and close friends were heartbroken to see Cole's condition, but were also moved by the power of Victoria's love. Nikki, Victoria's mother, who was always worried about her daughter, finally had to admit that Victoria had truly matured, daring to face all losses, daring to sacrifice and daring to love with all her heart. Victor, the powerful and proud father, although not easily accepting Cole, could not bear to prevent his daughter's final happiness. Both parents silently stood behind, encouraging, comforting, ready to be Victoria's support in the coming days. As the big day approached, Cole's health became increasingly weak. There were mornings when he had to ask for help to stand up, but his eyes still lit up when he thought of Victoria, of the promise to be together forever. Victoria devoted all her energy to preparing everything, from the simple wedding dress, the fresh flowers, to every message on the invitation. For her, every smallest detail was a message of love and a silent farewell to the uncertain future. The night before the wedding, Victoria sat quietly by Cole's bed, watching him sleep and whispering promises that only she could hear, that she would not let the pain defeat her, that she would live on for Cole's part if they had to part. The wedding took place in a solemn yet quiet atmosphere, as if the whole world outside had given up everything to the love of two people who were holding on to every moment together. Victoria walked into the wedding hall with a radiant face but wet eyes, her hands trembling but firmly holding Cole's hand. Everyone silently shed tears, but no one dared to say a word of condolence, because today was a day of hope, a day when love conquered fear. When the pastor asked for a lifelong promise, Victoria answered without hesitation, "Even if there is only one day left, I still want to be your wife." Cole looked at Victoria, feeling her warmth, steadfastness, and love, then gave her a kiss as light as the last summer breeze. In the days after the wedding, no one knew what would happen. Cole's health might gradually decline, the future ahead might be just a few short days. But to Victoria, each of those moments had infinite value. She spent the rest of her time taking care of Cole, telling him funny stories, recalling good memories, making every day a memorable one. She didn't allow herself to cry anymore, but chose to be strong and proud like the person she had been taught since childhood. No matter how cruel fate is, no matter how Cole has to leave her in the coming days, Victoria will not regret it. She chose to love, chose to sacrifice, chose to stick together until the last minute. The hasty wedding is not the end, but the strongest proof of a love that surpasses all the limits of fate, all the pain of life. Victoria knows that, even if there is only darkness ahead, the light of this love will forever guide her to move forward, and Cole, wherever he is, will always be in her heart, forever.